Riverstone Heights, a tranquil haven cradled by rolling hills and vibrant trees, my cherished creek wound its way through my property like a living ribbon. For over a decade, it served as a sanctuary, a place where the gentle murmur of water soothed my soul and sunlight danced on its surface. I cultivated memories here. Lazy summer afternoons spent skipping stones, the magical reflections of autumn leaves swirling in the current, and countless evenings listening to the serenade of frogs and crickets. This creek was not merely water flowing through land. It was a lifeline, nurturing both the flora and fauna that thrived around it. However, this peaceful existence was shattered with the arrival of the newly formed Homeowners Association, HOA, helmed by the ambitious Westfields. Their sudden interest in my creek came cloaked in concern for safety, an accusation that it posed a danger to children. At first, I was taken aback. How could something that had brought joy for so long now be labeled as perilous? The HOA's directive struck me hard: fence off the creek or drain it entirely. This ultimatum felt heavy with irony. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that they sought control rather than community welfare. As I began to investigate further, what I uncovered sent chills down my spine. Hidden beneath layers of earth lay a drainage pipe surreptitiously diverting water from the Westfields, sprawling retention ponds straight into my beloved creek. Their actions painted a clear picture. This wasn't merely about safety concerns. This was an attempt to eliminate a natural waterway that stood in the way of their ambitions. The moment I drained the creek, nature swiftly retaliated. Water found new paths through our neighborhood, revealing just how interconnected our ecosystems were. The flooding that ensued was catastrophic, not just for me but for everyone nearby. Even those who had been silent witnesses to the Westfields' manipulations now felt its ramifications. As neighbors began to band together in support of my plight, their initial hesitance morphed into collective resolve. We realized that this wasn't solely about saving one creek. It was about standing against manipulation and advocating for our shared environment. In this struggle, we would uncover more than just corruption. We would reclaim our sense of community and purpose as stewards of nature's delicate balance. The tension in Riverstone Heights escalated rapidly with the formation of the new Homeowners Association, HOA, led by the Westfields, a family known for their ambition and desire to reshape the neighborhood to their liking. Initially, the community welcomed the idea of an HOA. Many believed it would help maintain property values and ensure a harmonious living environment. However, this hope quickly soured when the Westfields seized control, diverting their focus from communal well-being to personal agendas. In a surprising meeting, the HOA declared my cherished creek a danger to children. The claim seemed unfounded, especially given how long it had been an integral part of our landscape. I listened as they argued that the natural waterway posed risks of drowning or injury. I could hardly believe my ears. How could they condemn something that had brought so much joy and beauty to our lives? Their insistence felt heavy with subtext. It was more than just concern for safety. It was part of a larger scheme. With their directive, I was presented with two stark choices: fence off the creek or drain it entirely. The ultimatum sent shockwaves through me. The creek had nurtured both wildlife and my spirit for years. As I grappled with these demands, I couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. Determined to protect what I held dear, I began digging deeper into the Westfields' motivations. My investigations unveiled a hidden drainage pipe running from their sprawling retention pond directly into my creek. Everything clicked. Their facade of safety concerns crumbled as I realized they sought to eliminate this vital waterway for their own benefit. They intended to manipulate land management to enhance their property value, all while masquerading as protectors of our community's children. As news of this emerged, I found myself increasingly isolated in my struggle against the HOA. Friends were hesitant to take sides against such a powerful faction in our neighborhood. Yet, as whispers of doubt spread among other residents about the Westfields' integrity, I felt more emboldened. The initial conflict wasn't merely about a creek. It was about the preservation of our community's values and environment against unchecked ambition. It became clear that if we didn't act decisively now, we risked losing not only our cherished natural spaces, but also our sense of unity in Riverstone Heights. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher, not just for me but for everyone who called this place home. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the HOA's demands crystallized into two alarming options: either I fence in the creek or drain it entirely. This ultimatum, cloaked in the guise of child safety, felt like a personal attack on something I held dear. I could hardly believe that the same waters which had nurtured countless memories could now be viewed as a threat. During the HOA meeting where this resolution was presented, the Westfield stood before us with an air of authority, laying out their justification for these drastic measures. They painted vivid scenarios of hypothetical accidents involving children, claiming that the creek posed an imminent risk. While their concerns echoed in the room, I sensed an undercurrent of insincerity. It was clear that their real motive lay far from genuine safety. As I looked around at my neighbors, many seemed to nod along, swayed by the Westfield's rhetoric. Yet I knew my heart and mind were set against this course of action. In the days that followed, I stewed over my choices. Fencing off the creek would mean altering its natural beauty and accessibility. Draining it felt like a death sentence for a beloved part of my land. Every time I caught sight of the water glimmering under the sun, I recalled laughter-filled afternoons spent enjoying its serenity. How could anyone perceive this as dangerous? Driven by determination to defend my sanctuary, I began to investigate further into claims made during that fateful meeting. It didn't take long for me to uncover evidence pointing towards a more sinister agenda behind the Westfield's actions. The hidden drainage pipe running from their retention pond into my creek revealed their true intentions. This wasn't about safety at all. It was about controlling water flow to enhance their property value while sacrificing mine. As realization settled over me like fog on a winter morning, I felt a surge of responsibility not only for myself, but also for my neighbors who might not yet see what was at stake. This conflict had transcended individual grievances. It had morphed into a battle for our community's integrity and environmental health. Many residents had initially accepted the Westfield's authority without question. However, armed with new knowledge and perspective, I resolved to rally support. If we allowed these demands to go unchallenged, we risked not only losing my creek but also our collective spirit as guardians of Riverstone Heights, natural beauty and harmony. The stakes had never been clearer, the fight had only just begun. Determined to protect my beloved creek, I dove into investigating the HOA's claims and the Westfield's true intentions. Days turned into weeks as I scrutinized every detail surrounding the land, searching for evidence that might expose their dishonesty. What I initially thought would be a straightforward inquiry evolved into a labyrinth of intrigue and deception. One fateful afternoon, while exploring the perimeter of my property with my eyes peeled for anything unusual, I noticed an inconspicuous path leading through a cluster of shrubs. Curiosity piqued, I followed it to a small clearing that revealed an aging drainage pipe partially concealed by foliage. Its presence sent a thrill of dread coursing through me. Could this be the missing piece to the puzzle? As I examined the pipe more closely, it became painfully clear that it connected directly from the Westfield's retention pond to my creek. My heart raced. This was irrefutable evidence of their manipulative strategy. They had diverted water from their property to mine, compromising not just my land, but also altering natural water flow in our entire neighborhood. This wasn't merely about safety, this was about control. With newfound determination, I documented everything meticulously. Photographs of the pipe, sketches of how it connected to both properties, and notes detailing my findings. It was essential to present as comprehensive a case as possible to share with my neighbors and possibly rally their support against the HOA's unjust demands. As I returned home that day, the weight of revelation pressed heavily on my shoulders. Too long had our community accepted the Westfield's authority without question. They had masqueraded behind their safety concerns while orchestrating a plan that suited only their ambitions. But now that veil began to lift, revealing their self-serving motivations. My resolve solidified. This fight transcended mere personal loss or gain. It was a matter of preserving our tight-knit community and its resources from greed-driven manipulation. Realizing that many of our neighbors remained oblivious to these machinations ignited within me a sense of urgency. They needed to know what was truly at stake. I began sharing my discoveries during casual gatherings at our community's clubhouse and on neighborhood social media platforms. As the truth started to circulate among residents, there was an awakening, a shift in perception about the Westfields and their tactics. It quickly became apparent that not only was I safeguarding my sanctuary, I was igniting a collective spirit bent on restoring integrity and protecting Riverstone Heights for generations to come. As the investigation progressed, the magnitude of the Westfield's duplicity became increasingly apparent. The discovery of the hidden drainage pipe marked a turning point, unraveling the facade that had shrouded their actions in plausible deniability. What initially seemed like a simple issue of safety transformed into a far more sinister narrative, one steeped in greed and manipulation. My findings revealed that the HOA's true intent was not merely to protect the children of Riverstone Heights, but rather to eliminate a natural waterway that interfered with the Westfield's property interests. They were banking on removing my creek to enhance their own land's value, transforming their estate into a prime piece of real estate devoid of any hazard. It became evident that they viewed nature as an obstacle rather than an asset, ignoring the interconnectedness of our community and its environment. With each passing day, my heartbreak morphed into indignation. I sought out local environmental experts who could shed light on the situation. Their insights became essential in understanding the broader implications of what was happening. They explained not only how crucial my creek was to the local watershed, but also how draining it could lead to severe ecological consequences that would ripple through our neighborhood and beyond. Armed with this knowledge, I presented my case at the next HOA meeting, laying bare the Westfield's manipulative tactics and highlighting the ecological importance of preserving our creek. As I spoke, I noticed glimmers of realization among my neighbors. You could see that they were beginning to connect the dots between what had previously been viewed as regulatory concern and blatant self-serving ambition. Word began to spread throughout Riverstone Heights about how the HOA's actions posed significant risks and reflected moral failings rather than safety protocols. The once muted voices of skepticism found strength in unity. We banded together to share information and strategize on how best to approach this growing crisis. The tide was shifting. What started as an isolated battle for my cherished creek transformed into a movement steeped in solidarity and environmental advocacy. Neighbors who had remained quiet spectators began to emerge as passionate supporters of preserving our natural heritage, motivated by a shared interest in restoring integrity to our community governance. With evidence in hand and community support swelling behind me, it became crystal clear. This was no longer just about fighting for one sanctuary. It was about standing against manipulation while safeguarding Riverstone Heights for future generations. Together, we would not only confront the Westfields, but reclaim our right to coexist harmoniously with nature. The moment my creek was drained, the consequences unfolded quickly and brutally as water began to follow its new, unintended paths. What had been a gentle flow sustaining our neighborhood transformed into a torrent of chaos. The delicate balance of our local ecosystem was suddenly disrupted, and before long, the implications of the HOA's decision became glaringly obvious. Within days, heavy rains struck Riverstone Heights, and those once manageable puddles turned into small lakes that crept from backyards into streets. Neighbors watched in disbelief as floodwaters invaded their properties, sweeping away gardens and damaging fences. The Westfields' mansion, perched high above the rest of us, felt safe at first. However, it wasn't long before nature revealed its true power. The relentless waters found roots through the landscape that no one had anticipated. They pooled ominously around the Westfields' estate, threatening to breach the sanctuary they believed they had secured. I stood on my front porch, heart pounding as I witnessed this catastrophe unfold. The very creek they insisted was a danger to children now became a harbinger of destruction for all of us. The realization hit hard. This flooding was not merely a natural occurrence. It was directly tied to the HOA's drastic and misguided actions. A once peaceful sanctuary had transformed into a locus of chaos and despair. As whispers of discontent grew louder throughout our community, neighbors who might have hesitated before began to rally around me. They recognized that this was more than just my creek. It was about shared responsibility for our environment and the collective impact of neglecting natural systems. With each conversation over backyard fences or during gatherings in our community center, I saw a shifting tide of solidarity forming. I reached out to environmental experts who could articulate the scientific ramifications of what had transpired. Their insights underscored that by draining my creek, a vital component of our local watershed, the HOA had inadvertently paved the way for disaster. Together, we documented every instance of flooding and correlated it with the loss of my creek. Armed with data and neighbor testimonials, we prepared to confront the HOA about their reckless decisions. As we organized a town hall meeting to address these growing issues head-on, I felt an electrifying blend of dread and excitement coursing through me. This wasn't just about flooding anymore. It was about reclaiming our community's voice against those who would manipulate it for selfish gains. We were standing at a turning point, determined not only to protect what remained, but also to ensure that future generations could thrive in harmony with nature rather than in conflict with it. The stakes had never been clearer. Our fight for a sustainable Riverstone Heights had only just begun. As the storm clouds rolled in, heavy raindrops began to fall on Riverstone Heights, a precursor to the chaos that followed. The Westfields' mansion, perceived as a fortress high above our beleaguered neighborhood, soon felt the repercussions of their actions. Initially safeguarded by its elevation, the grand estate quickly transformed from a beacon of wealth into a target for nature's retribution. With every passing hour, the rain intensified, and the ground that had once absorbed water so effortlessly became saturated. The landscape shifted dramatically. Where lawns had flourished and gardens had bloomed, small lakes began to form. Water pooled and surged along pathways, overwhelmed by an infrastructure incapable of managing the sudden influx. As if orchestrated by some unseen hand, torrents of water flowed down from hillsides and through yards toward the Westfields' property. Before long, the reality of their greed became undeniable. Their home was now at risk. I watched from my porch as water crept ominously closer to their doorstep, a stark reminder of how quickly mismanagement could lead to calamity. What had once been perceived as security now turned into vulnerability. Nature was reclaiming its territory in ways the Westfields never anticipated. The irony was not lost on me. They had sought to eliminate my creek for selfish reasons while disregarding its vital role in maintaining balance within our ecosystem. Now, with water finding new paths through our neighborhood, their grand design crumbled before their eyes. The notion that they could control nature's whims lay shattered along with their facade of invulnerability. As neighbors gathered outside watching this unfold, conversations flowed like the waters that surrounded us. A mix of shock and camaraderie filled the air as we shared our disbelief at what was happening to our community, and particularly to those who believed themselves above it all. Observing them squirm under nature's force instilled both concern and a sense of justice within me. We no longer viewed this solely as my battle. It had become ours, a shared struggle against man-made interference with nature's delicate balance. Armed with newfound determination and evidence of the Westfields' manipulative schemes, we sprang into action. Organizing an emergency meeting among residents became paramount. We needed to devise a plan not only for immediate solutions, but also for long-term strategies to restore our environment. Our aim was clear. We would confront the HOA and challenge these misguided decisions head-on. As water continued to swirl around their mansion, it became our rallying cry, the embodiment of what happens when ambition overrides responsibility. Together, we stood at a turning point, ready to reclaim both our land and our dignity against those whose greed had caused so much turmoil. As the floodwaters continued to rise around the Westfields' mansion, a shift began to ripple through Riverstone Heights. Neighbors who had once remained silent observers of the HOA's actions felt a growing urgency to voice their concerns. No longer could they see the flooding as an isolated incident affecting just a few. It had transformed into a communal crisis that threatened their homes and quality of life. The realization that the safety of their properties rested upon collective awareness ignited something powerful among us. People started gathering in small groups, sharing stories of their own challenges during the flooding. Conversations flowed freely in driveways and backyards, full of disbelief and anger directed at the Westfields and the HOA. I noted familiar faces from our community, those who I had previously thought were indifferent, now engaging actively in discussions about the environmental impact of draining my creek. This awakening marked a turning point, where apathy gradually shifted to action. I took it upon myself to share my findings concerning the hidden drainage pipe, a revelation that painted the Westfields' intentions in a starkly different light. When I presented photographs and documentation at an impromptu neighborhood gathering, I could see the wheels turning in my neighbors' minds as they connected the dots. What had once seemed like an abstract issue now felt painfully personal. It was about protecting their homes from both immediate flooding and an insidious long-term threat. Each family represented in that room now realized we were facing more than just a battle for my creek. We were fighting for the integrity of our entire community. I encouraged everyone to express their concerns at our upcoming HOA meeting, framing it as our chance to reclaim our voices as a unified front. As we organized ourselves, individuals began offering their skills, some with legal knowledge, others with backgrounds in environmental science, forming a coalition ready to confront the HOA head-on. In quiet moments, I watched them rally together, feeling a deep sense of hope swell within me. It was inspiring to witness erstwhile quiet residents transform into passionate advocates for change. Their commitment reinvigorated my sense of purpose. No longer grappling with this fight alone, we were all bound by a commitment to safeguarding our neighborhood's future. The day arrived for us to gather at the HOA meeting, and as I stepped into the room filled with determined faces, I knew we stood on the precipice of transformation, not only for Riverstone Heights, but for ourselves as individuals standing up against corruption. This newfound solidarity symbolized not just an awakening, but also our collective responsibility to protect what remained of our natural world against those who would exploit it for selfish gain. Together, we were ready to restore balance and integrity to our community. As the growing tension among residents fueled our determination to confront the HOA, I realized that we needed expert insight to build a solid case against the Westfields. I reached out to an environmental scientist who specialized in hydrology and had experience with watershed management. When I first explained the situation, he was startled by the description of how our creek had been drained and its implications for our community. When he arrived in Riverstone Heights, we met to discuss what had transpired. He walked through the neighborhood, assessing the damage and the new water flow patterns. Standing amidst flooded lawns and waterlogged bushes, he confirmed what I had suspected. The removal of my creek disrupted a vital watershed that had naturally managed water runoff for years. The consequences were cascading. What was once a serene stretch of water now turned into a conduit for chaos, creating havoc not just for my property but for nearly everyone around us. Armed with his expertise, we worked together to document everything meticulously: photographs of the flooding, diagrams illustrating water diversion, and analyses of how the creek's drainage had affected local ecosystems. He explained how removing the creek altered groundwater levels and intensified flooding risks, details that could dramatically change public perception of the HOA's actions. We began compiling this information into a formal presentation to share at our next neighborhood meeting and with local officials. When I presented our findings during an emergency meeting with other residents, you could feel a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The environmental experts' insights transformed our frustration into actionable knowledge. I could see my neighbors grasping the complexity of the situation. They understood that this was not merely about a creek or even personal grievances. It was about preserving our environment and home. As I described how the Westfields' manipulations undermined our community's natural defenses against flooding, anger buzzed in the room. Neighbors began sharing their own experiences with flooding and frustration at the HOA's negligence. Suddenly, it wasn't just me sharing. We were a chorus of voices echoing shared grievances. Everyone felt compelled to contribute. The more we learned about the ecological impacts of draining my creek, the more resolute we became in fighting back. Conversations transitioned from lamentations to plans of action, solidifying our resolve to launch a lawsuit against the HOA. With evidence mounting behind us and unity finally blossoming within our community, we prepared for what would become a crucial confrontation not only with the HOA, but also in reclaiming our responsibility as caretakers of Riverstone Heights. I felt invigorated. We weren't just defending my property anymore, we were defending our future. Empowered by collective knowledge and purpose, we stood ready to hold accountable those who sought to sacrifice our environment for selfish gains. The fight had only just begun, but now it was fortified with newfound hope and determination. With our coalition of residents built up and our evidence presented, the next crucial step was to take action against the HOA and the Westfields. The environmental expert we had consulted not only provided critical insights, but also agreed to stand by us as a witness in any legal proceedings. His backing would lend us the credibility we needed to challenge the HOA's negligence head-on. As we prepared to file our lawsuit, I couldn't help but reflect on the gravity of our situation. The HOA had ignored repeated warnings and expert advice regarding the ecological impact of draining the creek. Their decisions had led not only to flooding, but also to significant damage to the local ecosystem. We needed to emphasize this negligence in our legal arguments. It was essential to show that they had a duty to protect our community and its resources, a responsibility they blatantly disregarded in pursuit of personal gain. We drafted a formal complaint outlining our grievances, detailing how the removal of the creek disrupted the watershed and led to widespread flooding. Each point was meticulously crafted to demonstrate the direct consequences of their actions. With each signature gathered from supportive neighbors, I felt a deepening sense of solidarity. This was no longer just my battle, it was ours. As the date approached for filing the lawsuit, emotions ran high within our group. Some expressed anxiety over how the HOA would respond, while others felt a surge of empowerment at the thought of standing up against such blatant injustice. I found comfort in our unity. We were no longer isolated individuals, but a collective force ready to reclaim our community. On the day we filed our lawsuit, a sense of determination filled the air. Standing together outside the courthouse, neighbors rallied around me, sharing words of encouragement. It was evident that this moment marked a turning point for Riverstone Heights. We were sending a clear message that we would no longer tolerate manipulation or negligence from those in power. The lawsuit quickly garnered media attention, which only amplified our cause. Local news outlets began covering our story, framing it as a David versus Goliath struggle between a community standing up for its rights and an HOA seeking to exploit them. As reports circulated, more residents began to reach out, offering their support and sharing their own experiences with the HOA's overreach. Together, we began organizing community meetings where residents could discuss their concerns and strategize on how best to move forward. Each meeting drew larger crowds, reinforcing our message that unity was key in confronting corruption. We weren't merely fighting for restoration. We were igniting a movement aimed at ensuring accountability for future generations. With newfound energy and purpose, we pressed on with our fight for justice, ready to address not only the damages caused by the flooding, but also the very principles that grounded our community. We sought to create lasting change, not just in Riverstone Heights, but also as a model for other neighborhoods facing similar struggles. The road ahead was uncertain, but we were steadfast in our commitment to protect our homes and restore balance to our environment. The outcome of our lawsuit against the HOA and the Westfields arrived with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The courtroom felt charged with a palpable energy, filled with supporters who had once stood silent. As I entered, I was bolstered by the knowledge that we were fighting for more than just myself. We were standing up for every neighbor affected by the flooding and the manipulation that led us here. As the proceedings began, testimony from our environmental expert laid bare the negligent actions of the HOA. He explained how their decision to drain my creek had altered the natural water flow, revealing the direct link between their actions and the destruction that followed. His insights illuminated how this wasn't merely an issue of property. It was an ecological disaster that risked our neighborhood's very foundations. The judge listened attentively as he highlighted how ignoring established environmental principles not only harmed one property, but threatened to destabilize the community as a whole. Evidence was presented in piecemeal fashion, each piece intricate yet compelling. Photographs of the flood damage, diagrams showcasing altered water flow, and written testimonies from anguished neighbors painted a picture of devastation and despair. It wasn't lost on us how effective our collaborative efforts had become. Members of our community stood shoulder to shoulder, supporting one another through this fight for justice. When it came time for closing arguments, I stepped forward, fueled by a sense of urgency. I spoke passionately about what it meant to lose my creek, a cherished sanctuary that had supported our local ecosystem for years. I emphasized that this was not simply about personal loss. It symbolized a critical infringement on nature's power to harmoniously coexist with our daily lives. The Westfields had exploited their influence within the HOA to advance an agenda rooted in selfishness, without regard for its impact on those around them. Days later, when the verdict was finally announced, shockwaves rippled through Riverstone Heights. The judge ruled in favor of our community, holding the Westfields accountable for their negligence and ordering them to compensate affected residents. In a twist of irony, they were forced to sell their mansion at a significant loss, a lesson learned too late and one that resonated deeply throughout the neighborhood. As word spread of this outcome, waves of relief washed over us, mingled with a bittersweet taste of justice served. Our once fractured community had rallied together not just against the Westfields, but in defense of nature and mutual respect among neighbors. This victory represented more than just restoration. It signified a new era in Riverstone Heights where we embraced our role as stewards of the environment. The creek was soon scheduled for restoration, emphasizing the potential for rejuvenation after destruction. Our battle proved that while ambition can lead to devastation if left unchecked, collective action rooted in awareness and responsibility has the power to reshape futures, not only for ourselves but also for generations yet to come. As I stood by the flowing water, I marveled at what we had achieved together. A communal spirit ignited through adversity, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with renewed vigor and resilience. With the lawsuit behind us and the Westfields held accountable for their actions, a transformational wave swept through Riverstone Heights. The community emerged not only victorious, but also invigorated by a newfound sense of purpose and responsibility toward our environment. As we began to heal from the turmoil of recent events, it became clear that our experiences had instilled in us a desire for sustainable governance. Recognizing the need for change at the leadership level, residents rallied together to form a new homeowners association board, one committed to transparency, accountability, and ecological stewardship. The selection process was both hopeful and vigorous. Candidates were evaluated based on their passion for environmental issues and their vision for a sustainable future. It was heartening to see neighbors stepping forward, eager to participate in shaping Riverstone Heights into a model community focused on harmony with nature. The first official meeting of the new board took place in the heart of our neighborhood, where we once gathered to express frustration over the HOA's previous actions. This time, however, the atmosphere was charged with optimism as residents shared ideas about conservation initiatives and community projects aimed at restoring our local ecosystem. We discussed plans for reintroducing native plants along the creek banks, establishing rain gardens to manage runoff more effectively, and creating educational programs for residents about watershed management. As we embarked on these initiatives, a renewed sense of connection blossomed among neighbors. Many who had previously been indifferent or disengaged now found themselves actively involved in discussions about sustainability and environmental preservation. Workshops were organized to teach residents about eco-friendly practices such as composting, reducing waste, and conserving water. Our efforts extended beyond individual homes. We sought to foster an awareness of our collective impact on the environment. Interestingly, we also decided to host regular community cleanup days along the creek and surrounding areas. These gatherings not only served to beautify our neighborhood, but also became opportunities for bonding, families and friends working side by side, strengthening relationships while taking care of our shared spaces. The sight of children learning to appreciate nature alongside their parents illustrated the generation of stewards we hoped to cultivate. As I watched our plans unfold, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. The creek that had once been drained was being restored, not just physically but spiritually as well. It stood as a symbol of resilience and renewal, representative of how communities can learn from past mistakes and emerge stronger. In this new chapter for Riverstone Heights, environmental consciousness became woven into the fabric of our daily lives. We embraced the role of caretakers not only for our homes, but also for the natural world surrounding us. Through collective action, we were forging a path towards sustainability that celebrated both our heritage and our commitment to future generations. Together, we had transformed adversity into opportunity, embodying a spirit ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with unity and resolve. The restoration of the creek, a pivotal moment for our community, began shortly after the new Homeowners Association board assumed leadership. With a shared vision for sustainability, members rallied around the creek's rehabilitation, recognizing it as not just a waterway but an essential part of our identity and health as a community. The renewed emphasis on environmental stewardship encouraged us to embrace this project with both hands. Local environmental specialists were consulted to guide the restoration process. They provided invaluable insights into how best to revive the creek's natural flow and enrich the surrounding ecosystem. Together, we devised plans to reintroduce native vegetation along its banks, allowing them to thrive and create habitats for local wildlife. Our goal was not only to restore the creek, but also to create a vibrant community space where residents could gather and connect with nature. Volunteer days were organized, bringing together families, friends, and neighbors eager to lend a hand. Children were particularly enthusiastic, their laughter mingling with the sounds of flowing water and rustling leaves as they helped plant saplings and clear debris. The sight of so many hands working harmoniously toward a common goal was inspiring. It breathed new life into our collective spirit. As the restoration progressed, the creek transformed from a neglected stretch of land back into the lifeblood of Riverstone Heights. The banks became lined with lush greenery, attracting butterflies, birds, and other wildlife that had long been absent from our environment. This rebirth served as a powerful symbol, a testament to resilience, unity, and our deepening connection to nature. With every passing week, we noticed subtle changes in our community dynamics as well. People began visiting the restored creek more regularly, not just for recreation but also for reflection and solace. It became a cherished meeting point where friendships blossomed and conversations thrived, a place that reminded us all of what we fought for and why it mattered. In time, restored pathways around the creek were created for people to walk, jog, or simply enjoy moments of tranquility by its banks. Community events began being held at the newly designated park area surrounding the waterway, outdoor movie nights, nature walks led by local ecologists, and seasonal festivals celebrating our commitment to sustainability. The creek had become more than just a physical entity. It had woven itself into the very fabric of our community life. As I sat by the flowing water one evening, watching children splash in its shallows while adults laughed nearby, I realized that we had achieved something profound together. The restoration of the creek wasn't simply about repairing damage. It was about reinventing our relationship with nature and each other. It stood as an enduring reminder that when communities unite for a common purpose, they can overcome adversity and foster lasting change. Looking forward to future challenges and opportunities ahead, I felt an overwhelming pride in what Riverstone Heights had accomplished. Together, we had transformed not just our neighborhood, but also ourselves, employing action rooted in love for our environment to create a legacy that would endure for generations to come. As the restoration of the creek progressed, it became more than just a physical rehabilitation. It evolved into a profound symbol of our community's resilience and connection to nature. The process was marked by a palpable excitement, as residents gathered to witness the creek's transformation from a neglected waterway back into a vital ecosystem. Each step taken in restoring the creek reinforced our shared commitment to environmental stewardship, reminding us of the delicate balance between human activity and nature. The newly planted native vegetation flourished along the banks, creating habitats for birds and butterflies that had not graced our neighborhood in years. As the creek's banks filled with vibrant greenery, the sight of children playing along its edge brought joy to my heart. They splashed in the water while parents looked on, laughter echoing amid the trees. It was a vivid reminder of why we fought so hard to restore this natural resource, for future generations to enjoy and learn from the beauty of their surroundings. Community engagement flourished alongside the creek's renewal. Inspired by our achievements, residents began organizing educational workshops focused on sustainability practices, where we learned about conserving water and protecting local wildlife. These gatherings fostered a sense of unity as we collectively sought to deepen our understanding of ecological responsibility. The awareness that had sprouted during our struggle against the HOA now blossomed into a proactive commitment to preserving our environment. As I strolled alongside the revitalized creek one sunny afternoon, I couldn't help but reflect on our journey. What began as an effort to reclaim my sanctuary had morphed into a broader movement for justice and environmental integrity. The creek became emblematic of our community's fight against manipulation and neglect, but it also represented our shared triumph over adversity. In the years to come, the creek served as a focal point for community gatherings and celebrations. Seasonal festivals embraced nature, drawing attention to our efforts in sustainability and conservation. We created programs that educated newcomers about the importance of preserving our local environment, ensuring that future residents recognized the significance of living in harmony with nature. As I gazed at the flowing water, I realized that true justice often aligns with nature's order. Our community had not only restored a physical landmark, but had also rejuvenated our spirit, an acknowledgement of what it means to coexist with the environment respectfully. The lessons learned through adversity forged a lasting connection among us, one rooted in gratitude for our natural surroundings. Our experience in Riverstone Heights illuminated an essential truth. When communities unite for a common purpose, they can create lasting change. The creek's restoration was not merely an end, but a beginning, an ongoing journey toward greater environmental consciousness and collective responsibility. Together, we emerged stronger, embracing our role as stewards of nature and vowing never to take it for granted again.